Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Get Cooked. I'm Sarah Cook, and tonight I'm talking to Rob Black, member of the Australian rowing team, and of course trains at our National Training Centre down in Canberra, the Reinhold Barchi National Training Centre. Rob, welcome, and thanks for joining me.
Hey, Cookie. No, thank you. It's my pleasure.
So let's get straight into it, and I'd really like to talk to you about your pathway into the sport. We've spoken to Jess Morrison, who was a talent transfer athlete from swimming, albeit sort of, I guess, covertly doing that while she was finishing up her swimming scholarship at AIS. Georgie Rowe, who came in through indoor rowing and surf boats. But for you came through a much more what we'd call traditional pathway into the sport. Can you tell us a little bit about how you started rowing and I guess your progression through those ranks?
I guess my journey to where I am now has been pretty conventional. I started rowing at school at King's in year 7. Rowed my entire way through high school, and then in year 12 managed to make it onto the junior rowing team in the quad, and competed at the World Championships in Lithuania, Trakai, Lithuania, and every year after that I've made under 21s, under 23s, and the senior teams.
Great, and I guess that is, when kids are looking at embarking on this pathway in school rowing and perhaps eyeing off Australian representation, it might seem like a very linear progression that I, as you've done, make my first aid at school and make the under-19 team and make the under-21 team and the under-23 team. But it isn't just a linear progression upwards, is it? There are some setbacks along the way, and you've had your fair share of them, particularly injuries and things like that. Can you tell us about some of the biggest challenges that you've faced throughout the pathway?
I think my first real setback with rowing, I wouldn't even call it a setback, because I think everything happens for a reason, and your path is just your path, and it's part of your journey. But my first real setback was in 2014. I competed at juniors the year before, and we were going pretty well in the domestic season. Got invited to under 23 trials. Made it into a quad that was going not super fast, but it wasn't slow, and I think it definitely had potential. But in the last day of selections, we got told we weren't going to be selected for the under 23 team. So I took that pretty hard. I didn't really agree with the decision at that stage, but I guess in hindsight and upon reflection, that's probably the right thing that happened. But it meant that I was able to make the under-21 team that year and do the Trans-Tasman against New Zealand with a couple of really talented guys in my team, like Alex Purnell and Harley Moore and Darcy Ruck. So there were lots of guys there that were in a similar position to myself, and ended up having a really good Trans-Tasman series, winning the Rusty Robinson Trophy. And it just sort of fostered my love for rowing just a little bit more, which was good, instead of having a super high pressure tour in under 23s.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's so important what you highlight there about how you respond to those sorts of challenges. Obviously, you say at the time that you didn't agree with not being selected, and that was something you took really hard, but then you took it upon yourself to make the most of the experience that you did have, and it ended up paying dividends, and now we look at where you are on the senior team, and your progression since then has been extraordinary, and of course winning back-to-back world championships. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, it's pretty special. It's not every day you get to row for Australia and represent all your friends and family, but to have success and then be able to do it again in a different boat category the year after is pretty special as well. In 2015, I actually rowed the quad with Alex Purnell, Wilson Muir and Chris Hayes, and we were based out of Perth. So and Antonio Mora Giovanni was our coach, so that sort of set the foundation for us. And then we ended up getting a bronze medal, and then the year after was in a quad with Tom Schramko, Luke Letcher and Caleb Antill, So it was pretty star-studded lineup with the large humans and Caleb. But that again was coached by Antonio, and I think that was our gold medal to lose. If I'm honest, I think we definitely had the cattle to get the job done. We just needed to keep our heads screwed on and execute on the days of racing, which we ended up doing pretty narrowly, winning against the Kiwis. They were coming back at us pretty hard in the last 250, but we managed to find just that extra gear and win that gold medal in Rotterdam that year in 2016. Following on from that, I was almost ready to stop rowing. Actually, I was pretty happy to rack it there, but I guess the commencement of the training centres down in Canberra sort of kept me in the loop a little bit. I went to that testing camp in November, I think it was, and was ultimately unsuccessful. I wasn't really doing a great deal of training, and wasn't in great shape. So, and again, rightly so, I shouldn't have been picked for that. But made me realise again that I wanted to keep on rowing. And Liam Donald down in Melbourne was also looking for a pair partner. So I decided to pack up everything, move down to Melbourne, and switch from sculling to sweeping and giving one-oard rowing a crack.
So you saw the light, is what you're saying.
Saw the light. I mean, I'm a pretty happy person when I'm around other people, and I like to work off others. So, I didn't really want to do another season in the single. I couldn't trust myself really. So, full credit to Liam. He pretty much taught me how to row a pair in those first couple of months we were rowing together down in Melbourne. Had a pretty good domestic season 2017. Adam Backer and Harley Moore giving us a run for our money. A couple of regattas. We'd get up one regatta, they'd get up the next. So it just seemed right that we'd make a four together, and then once again packed up everything and moved back over to Perth to get coached by Antonio again, and then went overseas and raced in Plovdiv and set a world's best time for under 23s in the four, and winning a gold medal by it was like 2 or 3 lengths in the end. It was pretty special.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess now looking back and with hindsight, I mean, obviously you've had a great journey and you've had a lot of learnings along the way, which you've given us some insights into. But what would Rob Black now say to a younger self, maybe when you're just finishing school and embarking on this journey or along that journey through the pathway? I
actually had a really good conversation with James Chapman after my under 23 selections in 2014 when we got cut. And I mean, he'd made the team since 1999, I think, was his first team.
Wow.
And it was, so it was a good 15-year spread of rowing for Australia. And he pulled me aside and he said, look, Rob, I know you're disappointed, but, to jump from under 19s to under 23s in 1 year, I mean, it's a massive step up, and it's the same step up from under 23s to seniors. But it's kind of under 23s, under 21s, and the underage pathway is kind of like doing your apprenticeship for a trade. I mean, you got to learn the ins and outs. You got to win some races. You got to lose some races. You got to, find out what works, what doesn't work, and that's probably what I would, I've taken that chat with me my entire career now. Is when I made it into the training centre, I was doing my apprenticeship there, continuing that, learning from the senior guys that have, won Olympic medals and, world championships, and, just watching what they do day in, day out and trying to emulate it, physiologically or physically. I might not be at that same level just yet, but, I can take steps towards, little habits and little mental applications that they use to getting where they want to go, because that's ultimately where I want to be by the end of my career. Just being happy to do what Chapo did and talk to, younger kids along the way, because, I was once in their shoes and they'll be in my shoes, soon enough as well. So it's about passing on what you know, because that'll help you in the long run, because they'll be coming up, and as we're leaving the sport, and, we'll be able to have a few good seasons together.
Yeah, and that mentoring is so important, isn't it? You've spoken about that chat with someone like Chapo, who'd been a stalwart of the Australian team for so many years, Olympic medalist, World Championship medalist, such a wealth of experience, and able to give you just the right insights at the right time. I had the same coming through my career as well, and it's those little things that you constantly think about, that one, I think bit of advice or one bit of information that you can constantly refer back to when things get a bit tough or a bit uncertain. So I think that mentoring that you talk about is so important. And for any athletes who are listening, hopefully they'll be listening to you, and maybe they take something out of what you have to say today that they can take with them for their career, or even if they have the opportunity to link up with you or any other athletes currently or formerly on the Australian team. That mentoring relationship can be really important, as you highlight. And I guess on that vein, what I guess are the three most important things that you would highlight or recommend for an underage athlete in terms of getting that preparation right and I guess sticking with that journey?
The three things. First of all is turn up. I mean, there were many mornings, and Nick Garrett was my coach at Mossman, and sadly he passed away last year. But countless mornings where he'd get a text at 5:30 saying, "Sorry, Nick, I'm staying in bed. I'm not coming." To which he would cop that on the chin, and he'd be okay with it, but I knew I was letting him down. So just turning up is half the battle sometimes, and even when it's wet and rainy or you're tired and fatigued, just getting out there, you realise that it's not all that bad, and you can just get through it, and just one more day, one more session, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've sort of learnt at the NTC. I mean, we train 6 days straight, no breaks, and then you get one day off. So if you start feeling tired, Monday afternoon, Tuesday, it's a long week. But
it's a long way to go.
It is. So if you just turn up and and do the session, that's just ticking the box and getting through it. That's one session at a time. It's a lot easier. So first hint or tip is just turn up, and you'll find a way to get through it. Second tip I'd probably say is make sure you enjoy what you're doing. If there's a way to train that you like, or if it's cross training or something like that, running big boats, try to do that as much as possible, just to keep that enjoyment factor there. I know lots of guys like cycling. I like to cycle as well. I like to row big boats, so if I can get out on the water with other people and build that camaraderie a little bit, or see some fantastic views while I'm out on the bike, that's something that I really enjoy as well. And third tip, I'd say just look after yourself. Actually no, third tip I'll actually take from Ricey. He said somewhere that in training you got to train your weaknesses, but in racing race to your strengths. So I think that's the way you're going to have the most success, is by racing to your strength, definitely, but making sure that where you are susceptible to being beaten, you're nipping that in the bud the whole way through your training program. So personally, I hate long Ks, slow Ks. It's not my jam, but when it comes to 500 meter pieces and starts, that's what I love. That's what I love about rowing. So when it comes to racing, everyone knows, and it's almost broadcast. I'm going to give that first 1,000 meters just absolutely everything and try to hold on for the rest of the racing. And I find that if I'm racing from out in front, if I get to the 1,000 in front, it's a lot different to me getting to the 1,000 behind, for that last half of the race. So yeah, that's my third tip. Train your weaknesses, but race to your strengths.
I think that's so important for young athletes. I really, really subscribe to that, because I think so often, we're constantly facing our weaknesses, and, that's what coaches are coaching. They're coaching technical change. They're coaching you to be better. They're always telling you what you're not good at. I think what we're not great at doing is understanding, okay, yeah, these are my weaknesses or the things I'm not good at, but these are the things I'm really good at. Let's protect those, but keep developing those, and then really play to those when we're in those pressure moments. I think it's something in our sport that we're not that good at harnessing and recognising. So I really concur with that. For young athletes, know what your strengths are, keep developing them, but absolutely moving your weaknesses in training is what's going to make the difference.
Yeah, I guess it means you just race with a lot more confidence in your own ability as well. I mean, like for me, if I start a race and I'm get 1 or 2 seats within the first 250 meters, that just builds me with so much more confidence to go the next 1750, being able to hit what I need to hit and execute a race plan accurately and professionally.
So we have on that train of thought a question from one of our listeners, and they've said, any advice for schoolboy rowers? So I guess going back to your Kings days and being in schoolboy rowing, what advice would you have for schoolboy or schoolgirl rowers who are listening to this?
When I was in year 11 and 12, I guess the culture at our school was to... if you're a rugby player, rowing wasn't really the best thing for your rugby. I completely disagree, and the rowing coaches definitely disagree. But there'll always be a couple of really good athletic guys and girls that choose not to row in year 11 and 12 for whatever reason. And I'd probably say to the guys that do row and are fully committed, try and keep as many people in the sport as possible, because I guess success will breed enjoyment and satisfaction in the process. But having said that, hard work wins a lot of races as well. That's what's the saying, hard work beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. It's a good one.
Yep.
So pretty much just try and work together during that Christmas period as much as you can, because that's a good 6-7 week block where there's no real structured training apart from the odd camp here and there, and I guess in club scene, 6-7 week break is suicide pretty much when it comes to being successful on the water. So even if you can just get together with 1 or 2 guys from your crew, and just keep fit, whether it be going for a run or sitting on the erg together or doing whatever, or going to the sandhills and running sandhill sprints. That's just a bit of physical training that maybe other schools might not be doing. So that Christmas period, I reckon, is where you can either make or break your season. So if you're serious about winning ahead of the river or nationals or making the junior team, just staying active over that Christmas break is probably the best thing you can do.
To any of my rowers who are listening to this right now, you've heard it from this guy, back-to-back world champion, train over Christmas. This is the message. I think this is music to the ears of every head coach. Training over that Christmas break, it is so critical. It's like taking 7 weeks out of the core of your season, and if you waste that time, season over. So great piece of advice there. And also sticking with it in year 11 and 12. I think what a lot of people don't understand are the opportunities that a sport like rowing presents. Not only, does it give you really critical life skills, you know, time management, discipline, organisation. The crew journey is rewarding in itself. So there's all of those things that are really important to your development as a human being, but also then the opportunities that it presents post-school, whether it's getting a scholarship to an Australian university or continuing that journey at an Australian rowing club or rowing university, a US college scholarship, making a junior team or an under-21 team or an under-23 team and starting on that national team journey. You know, there's so many opportunities that our sport opens up, which I think a lot of the school-age rowers don't really understand what's out there and how global the sport of rowing is, and you've obviously taken full advantage of that in your time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you just... People ask me, you know, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I row most of the time. And I was like, oh, yeah, I used to row in high school. You know, that's an immediate, you know, connection that you make with someone who, you know, it doesn't matter what they do or where they're from. You know, you've got rowing. You know, rowing's a massive sport worldwide. And so, you know, for lots of people around the world, we can have that similar connection and foster relationships or business connections, you know, through that channel. So it's really beneficial, I guess, for networking purposes, but also, yeah, as you said, you know, personal development, you know, discipline, organisation, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have one more question from a listener. I think it comes from the person who is the subject of the question. Can't promise anything, but what was it like rooming with Jed during the 2018 World Championships? I interviewed Jed a couple of weeks ago, so I think that Jed would like to know what you thought of it.
Oh, I had an absolute ball of a time with Jed. I mean, he's we didn't really get much of an opportunity to hang out in the lead up to the World Championships at that point, and I was I think because just the para group, their racing schedule didn't really line up with the rest of the team. But yeah, I had an absolute ball with him. Hadn't really spoken to him much beforehand. I was actually rooming with Josh Booth during the World Championships, but he got sick for, you know, 1 or 2 nights, so I had to isolate myself with Jed, and yeah, it was really good just chatting to him and learning more about his journey and his take on life. I mean, he's one guy that's taken, you know, a couple of hard knocks, losing his leg and what he thought was his way of life, but, you know, he was telling me about his mental attitude towards it. You know, he said he could have, you know, really spiraled out of control, and, you know, he remembers telling me he was sitting in his hospital bed, and he knew that there was one path that was, you know, gonna just get out of control and get really dark, or it could, you know, turn off and try and make a positive, you know, outtake from this and help people who are in similar situations. And so him as a human being, he's just a legend. I've got lots and lots of time for Jed. So I absolutely enjoyed rooming with him, and we'll do it again in a heartbeat, that's for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, such an inspiring guy. I really enjoyed having my chat with him as well. And just before we move on to our Fast Five, I'd just like to talk about your family. They've been such a big support for you throughout your journey. You know, tell us a little bit about how they've supported you along the way and how much they mean to you in this journey, because it does take, you know, a lot. You need to lean on a lot of people going through, particularly as you get further through and into the senior ranks. You really do need to lean on your support network, don't you? Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've been with me every step of the way. You know, although I might be out on the water, you know, putting myself to the sword rowing, they're doing that in the grandstands or whatever. I mean, my mum refers to herself as the screaming banshee, and I remember all through my high school rowing years, and she's quietened up the last couple of years. I think her voice might be starting to go, but, you know, you get to the 1500 metre mark of the race, and I could hear her screaming from the grandstands anyway, 500 metres away. So you know that she's always on my side, and, you know, if ever I've had issues or, you know, problems, you know, she'd be the first person I'd turn to and help with that mental side of my rowing career. And
I know that she supports me 100% with everything that I do. My dad as well, he's been a massive support. I remember at school, his fondest memories of my rowing career was Tuesday and Wednesday morning rowing sessions, because him and a couple of the other parents would come down into the shed and cook us bacon and eggs, and we'd get that and hop straight on the bus, go straight to school. And then I come home on a Tuesday, Wednesday afternoon, and Dad would be there and he'd be like, so I cooked, 4 dozen eggs this morning and 5 kilos of bacon. It's pretty chuffed with himself. And so he liked having that hand in helping us achieve our success at school. And then my parents both have just loved travelling the world as I have, watching races and supporting me that way. So I'm an old man, especially the last couple of years. Been travelling by himself, and for the World Cup tour at least, he'd come to the second World Cup that we compete at, and then there'd be a month in between the second and third, and he'd go on, a solo adventure around Europe. And the rest of the boys in the team just absolutely loved him, and started calling his trips Celtiki. So, he'd see the boys in World Cup 2, let them know his plans for the rest of the trip, and then come World Cup 3, having a few beers with them after the racing, he'd let them all know how his trip was, and so he's sort of got hero status amongst some of the guys there. But yeah, they're great supports, and even in the last couple of weeks, having moved home, with Tokyo getting postponed back to next year. I mean, I'm spending a lot of time with the old man for better or worse, but I've really enjoyed their company over the last couple of weeks, that's for sure.
That's great, and I'm sure they've hit a few travel destinations that maybe weren't originally on their travel list, particularly around Eastern Europe, that rowing wouldn't have taken them to.
Yeah, Lithuania and Bulgaria I don't think were high on the list to begin with, but if you told them, would you go back again, I'm sure they would in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. I've seen your parents at the regattas, and they're certainly there and very proud, and it's so awesome that they've been able to go on this journey with you. But let's move to our fast five. So the last 5 questions. We'll start with, what's your favourite rowing course to row on?
Lucerne is pretty good. Lucerne.
That does seem to be an overwhelming favourite, I have to say. It's my number 1 as well.
Yeah,
top track to erg to?
Fuel by Metallica, but I'll pretty much take anything with loud, fast drums. That's my go-to.
I can't tell that that race pace work's your favourite thing to do. Yeah. Best piece of advice you've been given, and you've given us a few gems, but what's the one that sticks in your head?
Rowing wise, I'd probably have to say Chapo's advice that he's given me. Your underage program is your apprenticeship, and make sure you're learning and taking notes from the senior guys in the team.
Absolutely. And your career highlight to date, and you've got a few to choose from, but what's the one that sticks out for you?
I'd probably say the last 500 metres of the 2017 under 23-4. That was pretty special. If you compare that to the year before, getting pretty nervous with the Kiwis coming back at us, and then and only just winning, I think it was by 0.2 of a second, to them being able to win by 3 lengths. I guess we were able to sort of relax a little bit more, soak it all up. It was pretty special.
That's great. And the hardest session you've ever done?
I know I've said I liked doing racing, race pieces, but the hardest session I've ever done, there's a tie. In 2017, we did 10 by 4 minutes on 1 minute off with Lyle and Antonio in Varese. So 2 or 3 weeks before we actually got to the World Champs. That was a pretty that one sucked. Well, we struggled to get above 32, rate 32 by the last one because we were just bugging by the end. So that's one, and the second one is, I think it was 2250s or 3250s from a start in the 8 while we were in Rockhampton in 2018. That was brutal, and I was in bow pair with Lamb, and so you'd check and spin the boat, but then it would be your responsibility to tap the boat up to the line as well. So really, we just rode 15k just doing loops by ourselves pretty much, so it sucked.
Yeah, pretty brutal. Oh, well, thank you so much, Rob. It's been great to chat to you, and I think some really important messages there for so many of our athletes who are in school programs and maybe considering what opportunities exist for them in the sport, and also for those who are working their way through the pathway and through those ranks. So thanks so much for the chat, and all the very best leading up to Tokyo 2021.
No, thanks for having me, Cookie.